Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I'm going to bring you a really fun and cute video that's a little different than all of my other videos. I'm going to show you how I prepared some DIYs for my little cousin's Lumberjack themed first birthday party. This birthday party was so cute, and he made the cutest little lumberjack. But first, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, hit that drop down menu and click all so you're notified about all notifications. Then join me on Instagram and Facebook and let's get social. Join my crafting community by giving me a like and a follow, because sometimes I post behind the scene content I know you're not going to want to miss. Alright, so let's get started with these lumberjack DIYs. Now first, I want to let you know that all of these DIYs were Pinterest inspired. My cousin sent me some pictures of some cute DIYs she wanted me to attempt for her son's party. So I said, let's do it. So let's go! So for this first DIY, I'm going to start off with a mason jar, and I'm going to give this 2 really good coats of my nutmeg paint from Apple Barrel. Now, this first thing we're making is actually going to be utensil holders, so we're going to make 3 jars, but 2 of them are going to look different than this one. This one is kind of the special one. Then I'm going to take 2 other jars, and I'm going to give each one of those 2 really good coats of ivory chalk paint from Waverly. Next, I'm going to take this flannel ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm simply just going to hot glue a piece of it around the middle of my mason jars. And I did this on both. Now, my cousin picked up a lot of her party supplies from Hobby Lobby, Amazon, and Oriental Trading. But you can pretty much find this plaid, this buffalo check plaid pattern anywhere. And this was the theme of her party. So this fabric right here is what you're going to see repeated throughout the entire party. So anything I did, I tried to use that style. So after I had my ribbon glued down, I took some twine and I wrapped it around the lip of the jar. I wrapped it around a few times, and then I simply tied it in a bow in the front. And then I grabbed my other mason jar and did the same exact thing. After that, 2 of our 3 jars are complete. Next, I went back to the first jar with the nutmeg paint, and I used a lid off of a paint bottle, and I just traced a circle kind of down at the bottom of the mason jar. Then I took some of my light mocha paint, which is just a lighter brown, and I went ahead and I painted in my circle. While that was drying, I took my black paint marker and I drew 2 circles above the light brown circle to create 2 eyes. Then I dipped the end of my paintbrush in some white chalk paint and added 2 little dots in my eyes. Next, I'm going to take some red paint, mix it with some white paint, stir it up to make a light pink, and then I'm going to add 2 little circles to make little rosy cheeks. Then to add some dimension, I dipped my brush in some straight red paint and I dabbed it on my pink. That way it added a little bit more detail. After that light brown paint was dry, I took my black paint marker and I drew a little circle on the top, and then I painted it in with some black acrylic paint. After that, I used that paint to draw a little mouth for our little bear. Then I took some of this solid black ribbon and I created a bow to hot glue at the bottom of the mason jar. Now real quick, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new, thank you so much for choosing to stop by today. I hope that you love what you see. If you're returning, thank you so much for choosing to stop back by, and I hope that you stick with me for a while by subscribing to my channel. After my bow was made, I went ahead and hot glued it to the bottom of my mason jar and cut off the tails to make them a little bit shorter. Next, I took this fur that I got from Hobby Lobby and I'm going to cut out 2 little ears. After I cut one of my ears out, I went ahead and used it as a guide to cut my second one. After they were cut out, I gave them a little haircut, so that way it was nice and clean and you can tell that they are little ears. After that, I glued one ear on either side of his eyes by using my hot glue. After those were glued down, that completed the 3rd jar in our little utensil set. You're going to have to stick around till the end to see the final reveal. For my next DIY, I'm going to use this big G that I got from Hobby Lobby, and of course it was on sale, and then some of this buffalo check red and black paper. The first thing I did was trace my G on the paper. Now, I knew that it was not going to fit the entire letter, so I would have to piece the bottom together. But after I cut it out, I don't know what I did. I accidentally cut off a piece of the letter, but you're going to see how I fixed that in 1 minute. It was an easy fix, but I just can't believe I did that. So as you can see, I accidentally cut off the little top part, the part that goes in. So now I'm confused and trying to figure out what I did. And you can see the part that I cut off is actually sitting upside down underneath the G, but I didn't see it at that time, but I saw it now. If I would have just seen that, I could have easily glued that on. So before I glued all my pieces on, I did decide to give this a really good coat of black acrylic paint. Then I went back to my scrapbook paper and I'm going to use my Mod Podge to adhere it all down. Now this is going to be a little door hanger to welcome in everyone, and I'm going to put his name, which is Giovanni, nice and Italian, on this too. So when you work with Mod Podge, you want to make sure that it's a nice even layer. You want to make sure that it's thin, and it helps for bigger projects like this to work in small sections. Then you want to carefully push your paper down without ripping it. I also have a brayer tool that I had, but I don't believe I used it here. I may not have had it at this time. Now here I'm going to go ahead and cut out the piece that I accidentally cut off. So I'm just going to line up the little squares to the paper that's already on there because I want it to look seamless. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Then again, by using my Mod Podge, I'm going to glue that on. So once that's down, I'm going to work on the bottom, and I'm just going to piece that together. Now again, I'm going to line up my squares. Now I'm kind of giving this a rough cut. I'm not getting as close to the letter as I can because after it's all glued down, I am going to go back and use my sanding sponge and a nail file and really sand down the edges. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to get really close and I'm going to cut out all of the excess paper. Now you want to be careful when you do this because really I should have let this Mod Podge dry because when I went to sand it and cut it, it did rip the paper a little bit. So I did have a little boo-boo, but I am going to fix that in a minute, but just make sure that your Mod Podge is completely dry. After I cut off the excess paper with my knife, I went through and I sanded it down with my nail file and my sand sponge to give it a nice clean cut. After that, I took a healthy amount of Mod Podge and I layered it on the top to protect my paper. Now I'm going to take these letters that I cut out from my Cricut, but you can definitely use stickers for this too. And starting at the top, I'm just going to line them all down and make sure I have enough room. So once I had all of my letters exactly how I wanted them positioned, I went ahead and took my Mod Podge and started gluing them down. That little bear I also cut off of my Cricut, and I'm going to hot glue that down in just a little bit. And if you hear that noise in the background, that is my little 5-pound Maltese snoring. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to make sure they are all spaced out evenly. And then again, like I said, I'm going to take my Mod Podge and glue them all down. Now you want to make sure that all of your edges and sides are glued down. That way they don't flap up. Now, as I was putting this on, I didn't realize, but the whole name kind of shifted downwards a little bit, but that's okay because you're going to see what I do at the top, so I'm kind of glad it did that. It was one of those happy accidents. So once all those letters were on, I went ahead and put a top coat of Mod Podge on top of those. Now you want to be careful when you do this because you don't want to accidentally lift the letters up. After that, I took some twine and I'm going to just wrap it a few times around the top of my G. I started in the back with some hot glue and then I wrapped it around and then secured it with some hot glue just every now and then. That way my twine didn't move. Next, I'm going to take my little bear, and I was trying to decide where exactly I want it, so I decided to actually hot glue it to where I had to piece those parts together. Now to fix my little boo-boo on the bottom, I did take 3 pine cones and hot glue them all the way to the bottom. I probably would not have put the pine cones on if it weren't for my little boo-boo, but I thought that this was an easy fix, and hey, it went with the theme too. So once I had my pine cones all glued down, I went ahead and glued down my little bear. Now, I thought about putting pine cones up at the top as well, but then I ultimately decided not to. Next, I took another piece of twine and I made a twine bow and I glued that right on top of the twine at the top of my G. Finally, so my cousin can hang this, I went ahead and I flipped my G over. I cut off a piece of twine, hot glued it to the back, and then I used some duct tape to secure it down. And that completed this cute little initial or name sign that was perfect for his party. For my next DIY, I'm going to make a cake topper. So I cut out all of these numbers and the shape of the tree from my Cricut. Now, if you don't have a Cricut, you can absolutely use a sticker. What I used to do was actually trace stickers, and then I used to cut them out of the scrapbook paper that I needed. So after I hot glued my two ones together, you can see that I layered the plaid paper on top of the black paper. I cut down a piece of a skewer, and then I hot glued that to the back of each one of my shapes. This is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you love what you see and that you want to see more. So YouTube will put more of my content in your suggested videos. Don't forget to hit that like button. Next, I wanted to make a little banner. That's what she sent me the picture of, so I thought I'd try it. So I took 2 dowel rods that I had in my stash from the Dollar Tree, and I tied a piece of twine on one side of my dowel rod, and I did tack it down with some hot glue. After that, I took more of this buffalo check paper and I'm just going to cut out little triangles. I also cut out triangles with some black cardstock. Now to cut two at a time, I'm just taking a square, folding it in half, and then I'm going to cut a triangle, and then I'm going to cut it apart. So next, I'm just kind of working with the positioning of all of the banner pieces. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out the black ones. Now I did 4 buffalo check and 2 black, but I did end up changing it, but it was just a minor change and didn't really make that big of a difference. But I just used one of the triangles I had already cut to use as a guide for my black pieces. Now that I have all of my triangles cut out, I'm going to line them up how I'd like, then I'm going to flip them all over upside down. Next, I'm going to add a little dab of hot glue on the top of each one of my little banner pieces, and then I'm going to carefully place my twine on the glue. Now a couple of my pieces moved, so I had to work quickly to grab them and fix it. Now for the sake of this tutorial, I did go ahead and take my twine and tied it around the dowel rod, but I actually took it apart because I wanted to wait until I had the cake in front of me so I could have the sizing and the proportions correct. But this made a super cute cake topper and I could not wait to decorate the top of the cake. Next, I took a piece of burlap scrapbook paper, actually. So this you can find in the scrapbook paper section of Hobby Lobby. And I'm just going to cut out a big square. We are going to make a banner to hang on the front of the high chair for when he does his smash cake. Now, I actually grabbed my daughter's old high chair tray and I'm using that as a guide. So next, I'm going to take my square, I'm going to fold it in half, make sure that each end is straight lined up with each other, and then I'm going to cut up at an angle to make it look like a banner piece. Then I'm going to take a piece of twine and I'm going to measure out 20 inches. Those are the measurements she gave me of her high chair tray, and it seemed to be the same as mine. So like I said, I am going to use mine as a guide. Then I cut the piece of twine off and I positioned my burlap piece in the middle. Now to make sure it was in the middle, I went ahead and folded it in half, and then that's where I knew where to glue my burlap piece. Now, in order to do this, I did decide to not hot glue the twine on top of the glue. I did here, but then I realized, nope, I want to be able to move this around if I need to. So what I did was I pull it up right here, and then rather than putting hot glue on the twine, I'm going to put hot glue at the top part of that burlap, and then I'm going to fold it over, but there is no glue on the twine, and this makes it easy and flexible for me to move on the twine for when I go to put it together. Next, I'm going to take more of this buffalo check paper and I'm just going to draw out the number 1. Now, I do have this paper over the burlap to make sure that I have the sizing correct. I'm going to use my ruler to make all of my straight edges. The only thing I wish I would have done was make the bottom part of my one a little longer, and you'll see that in just a little bit. But other than that, I think it came out pretty cute. So after I had it all drawn off, I went ahead and cut it out. Next, I'm just kind of cutting it down a little bit to make sure that it fits on my little burlap piece. Then by using some hot glue, I simply hot glued it down in the middle of my burlap. Now I'm going to be using this arrangement of fabrics and ribbon to complete the rest of this banner. So I'm going to use just regular burlap. Then I have some black burlap ribbon. I have that flannel plaid ribbon from earlier, and then just some solid black small ribbon. So the first thing I'm going to do is do all of my burlap. So I cut off a big piece, and then I did go through and I cut off the wires on either end, and then I'm going to pull the sides off to fray it. And then I cut them in half. Now you do want to make sure to pull the twine off of each edge, that way it frays it. Now I did go ahead and attempt to tie one on my banner, but then I realized that they were kind of too thick, too wide, so I cut those ones in half too. And that worked out so much better. Then I tied one of my pieces on my banner just to test it, and when I realized that that was the size that I needed, I went ahead and cut off several more pieces of the burlap. Now I am not sure of how many of each piece that I had cut, so I just was kind of trial and erroring it, but I did use my burlap piece to cut off the other pieces because now I know the size that I need. So I just did the same thing. I cut off a large piece of the plaid. I'm going to cut it into thirds, and I am cutting off the wire on the ends. And then I'm going to cut several strips of that ribbon too. After that, I'm going to move on to this black burlap ribbon. And same thing, I'm going to use a ribbon already cut to tell me what size I need. I cut several down, and this time I got smart and I started folding the ribbons back and forth, and this really helped me to cut a bunch at one time. So now after I folded them, I'm going to cut the ends to make all individual strips. Then I'm going to go through, I'm going to cut off all of the wire edges and pull the twine out to fray those as well. Now I did cut these strips in half too, so it would make it easier for me to tie on my banner. After that, I took this solid black ribbon and I'm just cutting off strips of that. Now it's time to put our banner together. So I laid out my pieces first because I am going to follow a pattern. So what I did was put both black pieces on either side, and then I put a plaid piece, and then I'm going to put the burlap, and then the black ribbon, and I followed this pattern the entire way down. Now to tie them on, I'm going to take each piece, I'm going to fold it in half, stick it under my twine, and then loop both ends through the loop at the top and pull really hard. And then I just did this until all of my twine was completely wrapped with ribbon. I wanted this banner to be nice and full, so I did make sure to cut a lot of pieces, and I pushed them as close to each other as I could. That way it looked nice and full. This banner was so easy to make, and it was a great focal point at his party. So once I had all of those pieces tied on, I decided to tie on some pieces of twine. So I just simply cut off random sizes of twine and tied them on. Wherever I felt like there was a hole, that's where I put the twine. I also added some of that red twine in there as well. I really liked all the different textures and the dimension that this banner had, and it was super adorable for his smash cake moment. All right, now that that's done, it's time to party, and here's the final reveal. What do you think? How cute did all of these little decorations come out for this first birthday party? It was adorable, and all of the colors really blended together. And how easy are those centerpieces? It's just a little log, and some of them had photos of our little birthday boy on it, and some of them had snacks. You're going to have to let me know down in the comments what you thought about this cute birthday party and if you're going to recreate any of these DIYs. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you learned a lot and got inspired to throw your own birthday party. Also, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Well, until I see you again, I'll craft and party with you soon. Bye!